My name is Beth Speaker Christensen. This is my friend Sarah Bass. We are here to present on AAC for the non-SLP, which is considering communication systems for individuals who need devices or another means of communication. As I said, my name is Beth Speaker Christensen. I've been working in the field for over 25 years. I've figured out that AAC is my specialty. It's called augmentative and alternate communication. I've worked in hospitals, clinics, school systems, nursing homes. I've hit the gamut. So I feel like I've got a pretty well-rounded history of business. And now I have my own practice called AAC Helper. This is my friend Sarah.
Hello, I'm Sarah Bass. I am also a speech pathologist. We love throwing acronyms at everybody. The earlier in the morning it is, the better it is. But I'm also a speech pathologist and an assistive technology professional. And I also am just very keyed in and interested to the world of alternative and augmentative communication. I currently work for a cooperative just south of the city of Chicago. And we're both members of a lot of organizations that do promote and provide networking with AAC. So alternative and augmentative communication. And when we say non-SLP, we're saying people who weren't trained as speech pathologists, which you don't need to be to understand these systems that we're using. So we have a few goals outlined for us today. First, we're going to make sure that we give information on how these devices are laid out, because initially when you look at it, it can be really overwhelming. If there's a communication system and you think, oh my gosh, I can't find any of the words on here. Second, we want to go through a little bit of the feature matching of how to find the right device for the right person. You have to make sure that you're fitting the access method that a person needs, as well as the language that a person needs to be able to get that rich, robust communication, not just labeling the things that are around them. We'll also talk about information on voices for AAC, including voice banking, which is a way to take your own voice to preserve it for a future need. This is something that's recently just revolutionized in this area. It can be a great tool, especially if you know to plan ahead for that. And then finally, we'll talk about some of the funding things for AAC, what money is available there to help with getting devices, and in terms of helping with either non-stable or degenerative conditions, how to write those funding letters so that you can get what you need down the road, not necessarily what you need now that might not work in a year or so. So just to get an idea, oh yay, we have some people coming in as well. No worries. Come right down. We just want to get a quick survey of the room and the Zoom if anybody wants to chime in. We just wanted to know, who do we have here in terms of family members? Okay, family members.
Your family member.
Okay, she couldn't keep up. Any researchers in the room? Okay, we always like to check. Any other therapists of any other flavors? Oh, what flavor of therapist? Woohoo! It's kind of our like
our people.
Right, it's our Pee Wee Herman moment. You say SLP, woohoo! And then any users of AAC who are here today or
Not yet. Oh.
Okay, yeah, our speech.
Okay.
But hey,
Fantastic.
awesome! Yay, we've got some of our people here. Okay, so we'll start off with talking about how a device is obtained, and we're going to share the microphone, hopefully peacefully today.
We can do it.
We can do it.
I have the clicker too. So, I've got right now, I hold all the power. We have been known to tag team on the slides and go, no, wait. So in order to start the evaluation process, we have to assume potential. Everyone has potential to use a communication system if they need to communicate. And so if you're breathing, you're our people. So we start with the evaluation where basically we're doing feature matching. We're looking at what technology is out there, what systems are available, and how we're going to match that to the needs of the client. And finally, at the end, once we've decided that there's a system or a page or a box that works, we need to have implementation and training. We need to make sure that all the people in the world around that person understand how it works so they can be good communication partners. That's the school team, the medical team, in-home care, family members, extended family members, the bus driver. Everyone needs to know how to communicate with our person so that the communication is successful. So when we talk about that, access to language and communication, a multidisciplinary team is best. We cannot be in our silos where just the SLP is standing alone saying, I have a great idea. We need to incorporate OT and PT. We need to incorporate the family and the user. Their motivation, their decisions are very, very, very important. If it doesn't work for the family, it certainly isn't going to work. I could have the best technology in the world and I place it in front of a client. If they look at it and think I'm nuts, it's not going to work. So we have to take into consideration, what can the client see or perceive or hear? We have to make sure that their sensory systems are taking in the same information that they're able to provide. And if they have any sort of deficit area in vision or hearing, we have to take that into account, because again, if the system doesn't match, it's not going to work. We need to consider access. How is their motor control? Do we have targets that we need to hit with our hand? Can I get my hand there to touch the button or reach for the switch? Can my eyes look at the eye gaze system from a distance? So once you've considered all of those factors, there are lots of different realms in which we need to consider our goals. We have operational goals. Can we turn it on, turn the volume up, turn the volume down? Do we know how it happens if it has a problem? Linguistic, we know how to get to the words. What words are we going to choose? What goals are we going to have for communication? Are they going to be pragmatic goals where we talk about how or why we use language? Or are they going to be grammar goals? Do we want the individual to make sure to put the S on a plural noun? You know, you've got two shoes, not just one. Social goals. Is the individual using this in group, at school, out in the community, in their knitting group, in their swim class? And finally, strategic. What happens if something doesn't work? How are we going to problem solve that? How do we make it so that we can communicate a word that might not already be in the system?
All right. So when speech pathologists start thinking about language, which is essentially what AAC is coming down to, there's a lot of research that we have in terms of what to use. Bloom's taxonomy, Brown's morphemes. These are two very important language developmental concepts, just saying this is how a child's going to develop language. When we come into an AAC device, we might have a student that we know has a lot of underlying language and just needs the access to be able to get it out. Or we might have a student who's still learning language or may have an underlying language disorder. So,
Have an adult,
or you may have an adult who
has already had language
and then just needs a machine to help them get it out. We do have a few devices over here we will reference. One thing we always say to speech pathologists and to families is essentially it's just language therapy. We're adding in a device, though really we think about it as the same approach we might take with our students who are learning language. We put a lot of acronyms in here as well, but we want to make sure that we're following developmental models as needed with people who are coming to us with some of the language that they might already have, or even if we don't know how to approach that. It's always important to consider, is it just somebody who's nonverbal, or is there something underneath? These are very hard things to assess sometimes, and that's why we want to find a reliable access method first. So a lot of information there. As you can see here, there are also a lot of choices when it comes to devices. So I think we can bring them over here so they can show up on the Zoom a little bit. Here we have, oops, you're playing with slides.
Oh,
oh dear. It's so it begins. So with our choices, this is a device from Tobii Dynavox. It does have eye gaze capabilities. A lot of times therapists will see somebody who has difficulty with movement or maybe controlling gross motor or fine motor movements with their body. And they'll immediately say, let's try eye gaze. And that's a great concept, though. If you've tried to use an eye gaze device, and it's something I always recommend that family give a shot at if you're looking at it for a user, it can be exhausting. I can sit here with a device like this, and after 3 to 5 minutes, it's like, I'm done. I love to talk all the time, but if this is how I talked, I would have to say, I'm done. I need more frequent rest. We have some, no, yes. So we have other devices with other types of language systems. Many of them are commonly touch screen, where you can get that auditory output so you can hear what's being pressed. I love you.
I love you.
I love you too, Beth. So there are different systems that can use the touch screen. Oh yeah.
Still love you.
I still love you too. We have systems where she's taking it off of a mount over here. We know that iPads are a very common way to provide communication apps at this point in time. The one thing with iPads is sometimes it is limited what vocabulary systems you can have on there, as well as the access is limited by what the iPad can do. There are a lot of cool things you can hook into it, though some of these other devices are better suited to mounting, better suited to alternative forms of access that have better technologies than the iPad currently has. So if you're looking at eye gaze, the newest iPads can do something similar, but what you're doing on one of these more technological devices is going to be more accurate and actually easier for a user. So it is.
There it goes. There it goes.
She's communicate. Oh, see, when you get this, you have to get
in screen.
the glare, oh yeah. You have to think about the dwell time. How long do you have to look at your selection once you get there? Huh? She still loves me. Okay, good. She does. So there are many choices. And this is one thing that we like to highlight, because sometimes when you go into a certain evaluation center, they might say, this is the thing. And if that thing doesn't work, it doesn't feel good, because you think, okay, well, that was the thing didn't work. Bummer. So we have more choices that are available in terms of language, in terms of access. That was some high-tech options. Here are some nice low-tech ones.
So I don't know if anyone was around when the show Speechless was on. JJ used a light laser pointer, like kind of like this one. And he would point to the wall or point to the board in front of him, and the person who was with him would read what it was he was pointing at. Very low tech, very effective, and it definitely pulled his communication partner into the conversation. They had to read what he was saying. There was no voice output. We've got things here like a pain scale that you might find at a hospital, a letter board so someone can spell out. Now, obviously, someone has to have literacy skills in order to access the letter board. Again, you can print out the home page of a lot of the different apps and systems that are out there so that you can have that on paper, laminate it, and maybe even use it in the swimming pool. Down here we have an E-Tran board. If I hold that up and my face is in the open square in the middle, what I can do is look up to the quadrants in which the picture, the letter, the whatever is up in the corner, and you'll know that that's the one. So I'm going to put the heart up in the corner. It's going to mean I love you. Okay. Right here, we have some tactile symbols. Some systems are using symbols that are actual items like a key, or what else do they have? They've got a pipe cleaner in the shape of a question so that you know that was a question. So with someone with a visual difference who may not be able to see the different systems may be able to use tactile symbols to hand you this one with the key, and it means open, or whatever you tell them it means, whatever you decide it means as a group. So there's lots and lots of different choices that are out there. There are so many that we can't list them all, but just know that when we're trying to find what matches your person, your person, the individual who needs communication, there are everything that can come together to meet sensory needs, motor needs, cognitive needs, memory needs, all kinds of stuff. So what we want to do is we want to start in the zone of proximal development. We need to start where that person is currently at. Where is their vision? Where is their communication? Can they talk a little bit? Can they talk, but maybe they're not understood? Do they have language already? Are they acquiring language? Is this a little child who is just learning language, or is this an adult who already had language, but now they're having a difficulty communicating? We want to start out where they're at and see if we can get them to that next level of communication with our goals and our implementation. One thing that we ask, though, is that when we do provide a system or we look into a system, we can't just give up right away. I had a family member in a session yesterday who said, well, we tried eye gaze for about an hour and it didn't work, so we don't think that's going to work. I don't know about you, but nothing's done in an hour, especially with my skills. It takes me an hour just to figure out how to turn it on. So we want to make sure that we give ample time in borrowing a device, trialing a device, using a device, practicing with a device, making mistakes with the device, seeing what works and what doesn't work, so that we can, in fact, move forward. So we can't just say, you know what, I don't like that one so much, we're going to get you a new one. If some child or individual has used the system for a few years, I don't get to just say, well, I like this other one better, so we're going to switch you out. All of the learning that you have done is going to be taken away and you have to start over. I don't want to start over. There's a definite learning curve. We have to take the difficulty of the motor task or the access, along with the motivation of language to say, I really, really want to say something, but it could take so much energy to access each button that I get tired after making a sentence. My muscles don't want to hit another button or another switch. My eyes don't want to look at another square. So we have to make sure that we decrease the fatigue or the load so that we can have continuous communication. That's definitely something that we have to see with a progressive condition. We also have to take into consideration, how long do we give an infant, a newborn infant, typically developing, before we expect them to talk? We give them a whole year or more before we expect those first words. And so when we give an individual or trial an individual with a device, we have to give them some time to know where the words are, to know where those things are that they want to say. And we can't just expect, well, I put the box in front of you today, go ahead. I've had teachers tell me, well, you got this kid a device, they don't know what to do. I said, they don't know the language, we have to teach them. So we have to make sure we give some chance. Yeah, so at least. So our audience member, for those of you on Zoom, just mentioned that the trial, the experimentation, the babbling, the touching all the buttons thing, when you first get a system, it drives teachers crazy and they want to get rid of it. Well, they're using it out of turn. Well, what would you do if a verbal child was speaking out of turn? We would have behavioral, ideas to say, please raise your hand or give me a signal if you'd like to have a turn, or shh, let's turn the volume down. It's not your turn. But we have to experiment. A child may, or an individual who's using a device might accidentally activate a box and go, oh, I want to say that again tomorrow. So that experimentation is very important. Ha ha ha. Okay, so with this, I'm going to let you speak.
Okay, I'll take this one. Yes. So in that point, that's a really great point to bring up. I like that it came up naturally, that our kids are learning and exploring. When we see a baby who's developing, I have a 9-month-old at home and she makes the weirdest noises, but I know she's playing with her sounds and she's seeing what comes together in a combination that gets her good stuff and what doesn't. And in terms of a classroom with teachers, I'll say, yeah, sometimes a student might need that time to babble. It might even mean like, hey, that means let's take a break to the social worker's office. We can drive them nuts for a little bit, or make sure that during free time, the student has free reign over that device to really hit or say whatever comes up. It is a situation where a user needs to practice. This is a famous, AAC famous quotation from Jane Corsten. The average 18-month-old has been exposed to 4,380 hours of oral language at a rate of 8 hours a day from birth. This is pretty much, that's been studied. A child who has a communication system and receives speech language therapy 2 times a week for 20 to 30 minutes gets that same amount of language exposure in their AAC language in 84 years. So we know obviously the student's getting more input than that 20 to 30 minutes a week, but what this quotation really gets at is we want to make sure we're integrating AAC into life. And that means sometimes driving the teachers nuts.
And that's also for adults. They're learning a new language. They know their words, but they don't know where to find them in this box. So we have to have some grace and allow people to find those words, understand how they're organized, and get there over time, not today, but eventually.
Sure. Then there's also this concept of the part-time AAC user. There seems to be a little bit of a conflict within our field where sometimes people will say, well, they're not an AAC user because they're not using their device right now. Well, we might have somebody who uses a walker when they're fatigued. We might have someone who uses a wheelchair when they go long distances. So why not have a communicator who can say, okay, I'm having a good day. It's easiest for me and fastest for me and easier for my communication partner when I use my words. Whereas I'm having a day where it's actually going to be easier for me to get my point across using the device. I do have a student right now who is pretty much verbal, but she is having more fatigue issues as she's aging. And it's difficult because the teacher will say she's not using her device in class. The family will say she's not using her device at home. And I said, because she's not ready to. Because right now the effort to get out what she wants to say is easier for her with speech. And she's familiar with her parents. She was very familiar with her school team. I said next year when she has a new teacher, she might find like, hey, I need this to clarify what I'm saying. And depending on where she's going, it's just going to turn out which is the path of least resistance. Somebody actually made an equation about this. Bruce Baker.
It's a good one.
Mathematized it. So you have to take your motivation over the physical and cognitive, linguistic, and time effort. And that decides whether you're going to have successful use of your assistive technology or AAC or not.
I mean, that's true with anything. Your walker, are you going to walk to where you're going? Or if you're going to the pool and you really love going to swim class, you might really want to use your walker to get there. If you don't, you're going to say, I'll ride in my chair because you're taking me to the doctor to get shots or something. So motivation is huge for any technology.
For sure. So it's always something to take into account. Oh, sure. We love talking. So we can start going into a little bit of why things are laid out on the device the way they are. This is what we like to refer to as the real estate. So the real estate is how much space do I have to put buttons on there? If someone has pretty good vision, I know that I can probably have smaller buttons. If somebody has good hand-eye coordination, I know we can probably get away with smaller buttons. However, if somebody's having difficulty with vision or difficulty accessing through direct selection or touching the screen, we might have bigger buttons on there, which means if we have bigger buttons, we get fewer on that page. So with the real estate, it's thinking how many things can we have on that front page? Now, if someone's access or cognitive abilities are where they can only have that one page, memory sometimes can limit that. A student might be limited to maybe those 10 words or 12 words. Usually they're set up like a grid, so more in those multiples. So we have to be very careful at what words we select to put on there. If a student's having good memory skills, good cognitive linguistic skills, we can do something where, oops, did you hit the button again? You hit the button again. Where they can go into categories, they can be able to go and find other words. So Beth is showing something here, the real estate. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that means we have 45 buttons that someone could access here. And with this, it also uses categorization where you can get more buttons by going through and pushing different buttons to access different categories. So when we think about what words to put in that real estate, there's a term that's very popular with speech pathologists, core. The core language, it's based off of the first 250 words that the majority of children use. So we always say we speak, we don't noun. So if I had a device that just had nouns in it and Beth and I were having a noun conversation,
Table,
chair,
person,
wallpaper,
me.
light.
Oh, that's a pronoun.
Oh,
Failed.
yeah. This is what we do for fun.
But
Microphone.
we made no sense. We had no language. So we have to find words that are going to represent language. So we need pronouns, we need adjectives, we need the words that we use most often. I can say to you, give me that, and you'll hand me something. I don't have to say, give me Starbucks latte, although I do often.
That would probably be on Beth's core page.
It is.
So we have to think about that navigation. How many levels can a person navigate through? That again comes to the fatigue factor. How long do we want them to wait if it's scanning through? There is auditory scanning where someone can just touch a button. But if you have 45 buttons and it's going through it's going through 5 rows. Then you have to wait for those 5 rows before you get to the one you want to click to select. Then it's going to go through 9 columns and you have to click to select. How long can you wait for that scan? Sometimes users are really good and they're like, okay, I can wait, I can get to it. Other times I've seen where people have difficulty organizing the motor. So it's the anticipation of getting there makes it difficult to click and access when you're ready. So we have to think, where is that access coming and what words, how many words do you need to wait? The book Ghost Boy it's an amazing story of a man who was typically developing and then had till he was 12. And then he got this, they're not meningitis type infection and ended up in basically a coma, vegetative state for 8 years, 12 years. But at one point he did, well, no, he started realizing like that he was thinking and everything, but he was locked in. He is very locked in. He could not communicate. And so everybody, you know, they'd put him in the day room at his adult daycare where there was Barney on the TV. And he writes in the book how much he hates Barney. Power to you, dude. Also not a fan. But when he first started learning to use AAC, there'd be these long lists to scan through. It's okay. You want eggs. Excellent. How do you want your eggs? Do you want them poached? Do you want them scrambled? Do you want them fried? Do you want them over easy? Do you want it hard boiled? Do you want it soft boiled? And he'd talk about how he'd have to wait for this long list and all he wanted was scrambled, but he'd get to scrambled and his body wouldn't do it. And it would do something like say poached. And he's like, oh, that is not the egg I wanted today. So we have to think how people are going to access and how we organize that language to let them communicate while they're still motivated.
And somewhat efficiently.
I don't want to take all of them.
Well, I did the whole thing yesterday, so we'll take turns. So with different devices, you can have different pictures. Some people really like a real photograph of a real orange, and it makes it real. It's not always necessary. And if you put too many real pictures on a device, you really end up getting photograph boxes and they don't look different enough for visual differences, for visual discrimination. So pictures are great. Sometimes we put pictures of faces. But again, you get these boxes of faces or of pictures, which causes a problem. Visual scenes for individuals who have memory troubles are Alzheimer's and dementia patients, we might use what's called a visual scene, where I've got a picture of their actual kitchen. When they touch the microwave, it might say, I need my food warmed up. So they're not remembering the word microwave, but they know what it does and they know what they need. And so that visual is going to help them to remember what to ask for. Just a different way to find the words that they need in real time in a real photograph. We've also got images like this that you don't find as often in systems, where there's a picture of a bedroom and it might say bed, closet, dresser, because that's the furniture that you find in your bedroom. Along with that, most of the systems use line drawings, different systems that are symbol sticks, widget something, widget symbols, widget sims, something like that. PCS symbols, which are made by Boardmaker. These are line drawings, but what you'll notice is without words above them, I'm not really sure what those are. We tend to read the word above. So when we think about the picture that's there, our new device users aren't necessarily going to understand the representation just because someone said, this one might mean want. This one might mean I or me. This one might be mine. I'm not sure. I'd have to look back. I don't care. But the pictures don't always matter. There's also what we referenced before, which are multiple meaning pictures. Bruce Baker came up with a system of hieroglyphics called MinSpeak back in the 80s. Those symbols represent families of words. So if I start with the wanted man, we call him Fidel because he looks a little bit like Castro, but he's got his prison uniform on. They've changed it to a little boy who wants cookies, which might be more appropriate for some. But you get, I got to quit hitting the screen. You get families, you've got categories up here of things. You've got secondary verbs, you've got pronoun phrases. So what happens with the words that Bruce came up with these min-speak symbols or pixons is they represent word families. So I get to tell this story. So we were in a training, Sayard and I, at a school, and this one program assistant teacher's aide kept turning to us and saying, I don't understand why the cookie cutters mean off. And I said, well, the cookie cutters represent holidays, and the prepositions come down to that word to say off. You get a day off on a holiday. She said, oh, it's just dumb. I don't get it. You make me feel dumb. I don't understand. It's so complex. And we kind of went back and forth in trying to explain different families of representation. And one of the teachers, Katie Alling, turned around and said, listen, it could be a board full of drag queens and it wouldn't matter. If the word right here is stop and I need to say stop, and I remember that location is stop, I'm going to find it. Doesn't matter if it's a stop sign, doesn't matter if it's this drag queen. If I want to say stop, I'm going to remember where it is. As long as I don't move it around, I'll remember what that word is. We figured out Mrs. Doubtfire is silly. Dame Edna was trouble. And Tootsie had a little too much to drink. So Sayard went back to her office, created this board, and we've used it. We're trying to see how far around the world we can get it to go. But it just demonstrates the idea that the pictures don't matter as much as the location of the word. And if we stay consistent, that box up in the corner or down on the bottom, the one down on the bottom is the one on my system that says sleep. And I'm tired and I want to go to sleep in my bed, in my room, because I'm tired. So I'm going to hit that one on the bottom. It doesn't matter what the picture is. When we look at a lot of the different systems, we see color coding. So on all of these, the pronouns are yellow. The verbs or action words are green. That's called the Fitzgerald key. Goossens, Crane, and Elder created a system ages ago that had color coding, and Fitzgerald modified that and made her own system. Fitzgerald of her? I don't remember. But anyway, this color coding system helps us to teach systems to say, okay, we're going to look in the green words. We need to find an action. We need to find the one that says this. And so they've done research to say that the color coding doesn't always impact the device user as far as being able to find a system better or a word better, but it does in fact help us to teach it to say we need to find a yellow word first or a pronoun. If we're teaching that expanse of language, we can also tell as we take data from the devices, if we're really heavy in pink words or really heavy in orange words, we know that the kids are getting to a lot of nouns, and we might want to adjust their goals to make sure that we're incorporating all of the parts of speech and language.
Okay, so this is a game sometimes we like to play when we have a bigger audience. We like to bother people more. My nephew is having his birthday party today, so we can't use these drink tickets. So if anybody wants to give us some answers, we will happily share our drink tickets. So if we look up here, what 3 words come to mind? Wheelchair, Play-Doh, and cookie. Good. We got 4 people in here, so I could see this dividing out very nicely. So if I put those, oh, I see one down there. You're in the corner. Hi, friend in the corner too, and people on Zoom. But if we are looking and we see these 3 words on a device, that really limits what a student might be able to say. So I'm going to come around to each of you, and if you could give me a word that you could put on a device instead of one of these, I will give away one of our drinking tickets. So just think to yourself, what words come to mind? What can you do with each of these? What does it look like? How could you describe it? What makes them different? Why do we need those different things? So who's brave and wants to go first? All right, coming back. So for that first picture, what is another word you could use? Go. Awesome. What about the second picture? What else could we say? Oh, you're getting the drink ticket. Why not? Slimy, yes. Hungry. Awesome. You ready? What would you say for the first one? Rest. Yes. Play. Food. Awesome. Okay, coming over here. You got to see us caffeinate earlier, so. Move, yes. Move, fun, yum. I love Play-Doh smell. Yes, travel. I like that.
What if you wanted a specific one? I've got a thing of Play-Doh here, but he's got green and I want something different. You can name all the colors. I want the yellow Play-Doh. There's a kid pitching a fit because he can't have yellow. Or me, I pitch a fit because they mix the colors together.
Dessert. Okay. And I love it. We got some categories. We got some adjectives. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say travel before. I love that. Yeah. So lots of things we can do with that. Sure. Okay. So when we're considering a system, I like to consider access first. How are we going to touch, look, access the device? Doesn't matter what words are there. If I can't get to them, I'll never make them talk, right? So there are two different areas of access. There's direct and indirect. We're going to skip that one. So direct access is when you touch the square, that's the exact word that you want to say. You can use that with your finger. You can use that with a pointer. My friend Danny wears a belt on his head that his dad attached a metal pole that looks like a unicorn horn. He's taped an Apple Pencil to the end and he uses it to access his iPad. So he uses that to direct select all of the words on his 140 MyCore. No, it's the MyCore and touch something. So he uses that. He also has a system with the shiny dot where he can move that as a mouse. Both of those are considered direct access. Eye gaze, direct access. You look at the square that you want to activate and it gets it. Ooh, the advantages to direct access is it's faster. You're going directly to your target. The disadvantages is you really have to focus. How many times can you touch a button before your arm gets tired? How many times can you touch that button before you start missing because your targeting, it gets a little off because your motor control gets a little bit more ataxic. There's a lot of fatigue involved with ongoing use of devices. I don't use these every day, so I don't see that fatigue, but I've got friends who have them on their chairs all day long from the time they get up in the morning until the time they go to bed, 16 hours. That's a lot of work. I couldn't do it. So indirect access might be a switch or a joystick where we have to go through a series of options to get to the one that we want. So the first is a joystick where we kind of drive it to the spot and then hit the switch to say, that's the one I want. This one is a leveled communicator where you can put 2 minutes of recorded speech into it. And what it does is that you might go through, get some bread, put on the peanut butter. Now the jelly, I need another piece of bread. Yummy, I'm going to eat my sandwich. So it might have a progression, maybe how you brush your teeth, maybe how I need you to transfer me in my chair. It might also have some comments about how to help me get dressed. My right arm goes in first. It's more comfortable for me. And then you don't have to reprogram all these other systems. This is a neuro node. It uses biofeedback in order to sense a muscle contraction to use as a switch. And here we have a sip and puff device where as you sip, it moves through the choices. And as you puff, it makes the choice for you. Some also use that to drive their wheelchairs. Playing a bagpipe.
Sure. So the advantages to this is that the motor involvement, the control, you don't have to be fast, right? The user, the individual who has the device can time it according to their own bodies. They can get it there when they get it there. The disadvantages is, and this is what we hear from communication partners who are not in the know, is it's so slow. And so, well, why are you in such a hurry? My friend Danny, the one with the unicorn horn, he's in college. I took him to college for orientation because his mom was not allowed to go. And we were getting out of there quick because we had to go find his mom. And I took his pointer off of his head and I said, oh, you can tell me that later. We got to go find your mom. He was so mad at me that I did not wait. he had one more thing he wanted to say. He was stalking the girls. He was looking around for his wife. I said, Danny, it's orientation. You need to find friends first. All right, this is my friend Chris. Chris uses the new point, which is the shiny dot that he uses as a mouse. So he'll move the cursor to the square that he wants, dwell on it, and it will activate. That's his bird pipsqueak. So as you can see, we've got input and output. We've got what do we know? What can we hear? What do we see? What do we feel? And can we go through a progression of scanning in order to hear the choices and the input from the device to know what we want to say, or can we get to it? The output, the eye gaze, the pointer, once we activate, these are some of the options that we've just talked about. And we want to definitely match different access methods to the moment in time that they need it. We have lots of kids that we, or individuals that I work with. He's 34. I got to stop calling him a kid. That he gets on Zoom and he can use his communication system through his, or the Zoom through his communication system. But when he wants to see us, he can't see his words. So then he uses some nonverbal communication to answer questions when we're on Zoom. We have to know to ask him the right way. It either needs to be a real short multiple choice or a yes, no. Okay, mounting hardware. We also have to get our technology to the people that need it. If I'm in my wheelchair for 16 hours a day, my device can be right on my wheelchair. But what if I want to sit in my Papazon chair in the living room? This is the Mogo mount made by Modular Hose. Very inexpensive. It doesn't hold a lot of weight, but it's really nice for iPads, and it can be attached to a tabletop, to a wheelchair, to tubing on something, to a stroller, probably to a Papazon chair. But, you know, if you're not going to be in your wheelchair or in supported seating all day, every day, we need to consider maybe a floor mount so that we can get the device to the person as they're sitting on the couch with everyone else. Or my friend who likes his Papazon chair, he's usually on his back. And what I do is I put the stand over him and his device is just above his head. And then he uses a different guy uses the shiny dot to get to the words that he wants. We've also got table stands here. But the idea is that we need to have options to bring the technology to the user because they can't always get to it on their own, right? All right.
Got it? Oh, yeah. Okay. So we've talked a lot about setting up the devices and everything, but it's also very important to consider what sound is coming out of the device. And something we learned with COVID, learned a lot of things with COVID, is that when you put a bunch of AAC users on Zoom and they have very similar voices coming out of their device, and it's a big Zoom and you don't see the highlighting, you don't know who's talking.
I had 3 guys on a Zoom call for a meeting. They all used the same male voice. I had no, unless their box lit up, I didn't know who was talking. And Danny, in order to sound different, the one who uses the unicorn horn and the Apple Pencil, he's now Australian.
Yep.
He likes the Australian voice because he wants to be different.
Right? I mean, you can get accents through a lot of these smaller systems, but there are so many options that are growing. Voice banking is something that's become very popular. It's something that I think came more into the public eye because Roger Ebert used that after he had his throat cancer and had his speech mechanisms removed. They were able to use past episodes of him doing his movie reviews to build a voice for him. So currently, if you know that it's something in the future where you might lose your voice, or if you just want to kind of do it for fun, I did use this one down here. You can put it on your iPhone and just speak phrases to it. I have my voice banked just in case. But if you do want to plan in advance for that, there are ways that you can go. It's basically reading phrases over and over again so that it picks up your intonation, it picks up the frequency of your voice, it picks up how you put sounds together, and it gets your accent. And this is something interesting. I grew up out around Western Illinois, and then my husband's from Chicago, and I find that I switch when I'm back home on the farm. Oh man, I do not sound the same. as I do,
She's a different person.
as I do when I'm sitting in the front room eating a,
Yeah, in the front row.
eating a couple brats,
You're not from Chicago, you don't know. that
talking
that's
about
the front
Ditka.
room.
Didn't know what a front room was.
The front room.
There's plenty of fun things around here.
Chicagoism.
So you can get that into your voice banking and sound like Ditka. Voice donation is you could actually be able to have someone in your family, a peer, someone that you know record a voice for you.
So through Vocal ID, it's about 6 hours of recording of words and phrases, and kids can do it, adults can do it. You can do it as a service project. You record about 6 hours, and they can take some of the natural sounds from the person who might need the device. My friend Elizabeth has one of these voices.
Mhm.
She doesn't love it. It's not quite close enough to what she thought she would sound like, but they took her sister's voice and they morphed it with some of her sounds to make a unique voice for her. She thought it was a little too whispery, but it's really a very neat system. Going back to the voice banking, I know one lady who just wanted to be able to call her dog from the other room. So she had one box on her device that said, "Come here, Fluffy," in her voice, because somebody had recorded it on a video and they incorporated it into her device, and it made a world of difference.
Fluffy was happy.
Fluffy was getting treats left and right.
Yeah, so there are so many options now. You can also purchase what's called a bespoke voice, and that would be more of like incorporating some sounds. There's even voice actors now that are going out and recording voices to sell as part of their ways to survive and make money. So lots of cool things. But we know that when physical change, now I'm doing it. When physical change comes about, we also need technology change, because we talked about access being something that fits together with our sensory systems and our motor systems. So when we're looking at the fine motor. How are we moving our hands, our small movements? Gross motor, vision and hearing are the things that we most often see change. So it's important to know, and I'm sure everyone here is well versed in this, what might progression look like? What might the future hold? And you can get these devices where it can be direct access by touch now, but it's a system that also has the capability to move to an eye gaze system and has the capability to move to a system where you can scan. It could be a system where you could use auditory scanning or visual scanning. There are some Samsung devices that have haptic controls, and I know some people are playing around with that. There are visual overlays that have different tactile cues for people. So this is where we have to think ahead into the future, so that when we get a device for the now, it's a device that can last, because insurance,
5 to 7 years.
5 to 7 years. So they can be a little persnickety about device number one. They're going to be very persnickety about, we need a different one because it's not fitting. So when we write reports, when we evaluate, we have to think about what's coming.
And this is that kind of that same idea. I'm looking at the time, noticing we're about finished, aren't we? It's after 11. Oh, do we have till 11:15? Okay, good. Then we're going to zoom through the rest of this. Hopefully not too quickly. Please call out if you have any questions. Again, 5 to 7 years before an insurance company is going to offer you a replacement device. They will repair one that you have. But if you drop all of your proverbial monies into one pot, or apples in one basket, whatever, you've got to wait again before you can get something different. So we want something that has options. We always want to have backup. Communication devices do not like to go swimming. And so we make a point of saying that we need to have other ways of getting that point across when we're at the pool, at the beach. You might take the home screen or a special board of words to the beach in a Pixie Pal. It's a waterproof snap-in case made in Australia that's it's portable and very lightweight, but you can have choices of something you can say. Obviously, it's not going to have voice output, but you could access that. Right. You might be a little less, the device itself at $8,000 price point, or $10,000 for some of the eye gaze systems, is a lot harder to take to the beach than maybe your $500 iPad. You might be willing to sacrifice the iPad for that day. We might also notice that when we're not in our chair, when we're not with our device, we might be in physical therapy. We might be in another therapy where maybe we have our therapist wear yes and no bands to say, does that hurt? Can I keep going? Can we do 5 more? It might be, does it hurt or are you just tired, right? Does it hurt? Yes. Okay, then we're going to do something different. Are you just tired? Yes. Oh, well, then I guess we're going to do 10 more reps. So, you can get the Live Strong bands created with different companies will put whatever you want on there. You can pick pictures that match what you want to say. This is the Pixie Pal up here. It has about 4 or 5 different pages that flip that you can put your board in there and have specific vocabulary. Some people use just a picture wallet or a little photo album that you can get at Walgreens. Put some pictures in there for an emergency. But again, we say, maybe we should follow the Fitzgerald key. If we're going to put some words on there, let's make sure that our pronouns are yellow and our action words are green. So when it comes to the mainstream devices, there's 3 big companies, but I'll tell you, there's dozens of manufacturers out there that make lots of technology. These are the 3 that have been around the longest with devices that are pretty well known. I think Dynavox was kind of considered the Kleenex of communication devices. If you were getting a device, you'd call it a Dynavox. Well, this is Tobii Dynavox. They were merged with Tobii years ago. They've been known for their eye gaze. There are other companies that have eye gaze. This is where, when we're feature matching, we have to look at the access method, the language system that works best, the features that have, whether you can use high contrast visuals, whether or not you have switch ports if you need switches, whether it can be mounted, whether it's too big, whether it blocks your vision because it's in the front of you on your chair and you don't want something so big. So when you're looking at things, we look at all the sizes and all the options. There are a lot of systems that we haven't talked about for children who are using the pod pages or the pragmatically organized dynamic display. Those are being put into some newer other devices. Is that me or you? I don't know where that's coming from. I'm sorry. Proxtalker is a mid-tech device. GridPad is another high-tech device that's becoming a little bit more popular. When it comes to adult users who already have language and want to find the words that they already know, there are a lot of different options because you don't have to teach language systems to a new child user. You can be using the language that the adult already has and just accessing. So it can be more, what's the word I'm looking for? Letter-based, word-based, reading, that literacy-based. Thank you. Oh, I need more coffee. It takes 2. We showed you a couple of the iOS apps that most of the systems that make a robust app that's very good and universal is done on iOS. There are a few systems you can find on Samsung, but if you really, really, really want something that's going to be supported and well-known, excuse me, you're going to want to go with an iOS system. We've got Touch Chat with Word Power, Lamp Words for Life, Proloquo to Go, Avaz, Go Talk Now, Cough Drop, Speak for Yourself, Clicker Communicator, and many, 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 many more. The ones on the top can be up to $300 a piece as an app. They do come with support. When you buy those apps, you can get some support from the app designers. But typically, when you need support for things, getting a dedicated device is the way to go because you have a whole company, you have representatives, and you have people that can teach how the devices work. If you buy an app, you buy an app. It's yours. They do go on sale a couple times a year for Augmentative Communication Month in October. A lot of times they're on sale for Autism Month in April. There's Speech and Hearing Month in May. There's Cerebral Palsy Month. I'm sure there's a ULF month. I don't know if the apps are on sale, but for all of the months where they know communication is important, sometimes you'll notice that these apps go on sale for half price. Okay.
Yeah, this is just a quick thing. When we're trying to learn a device or starting to learn a device, there will be a lot of discussion about prompting and communication. We just put this here that there's different levels of proficiency and speed, and that's really knowing the user or the person that you're working with. Just always remembering less to more is ideal. We might know where they're going. We might know what they want to say, which listen to that phrase, but just it's important to know when you're prompting to give time. That's the one thing AAC users continuously report is give me time to speak. So we put in all this stuff here, remembering what to do when you're speaking with people who use AAC devices or communication devices. We do have our contact information if you want to get a copy of the slides. But all of these things, such as having a backup, knowing communication takes longer, speaking to the person who uses AAC versus the person who's might be helping them with their wheelchair, or the person who might be standing next to them. And always remember, just every person is different. Some people love it when you can help them in their system, or maybe get like, we know each other well enough that I can look at Beth and we can find words for each other, or remind each other, or say, oh no, it was 12 years, not 8 years. And
But my mom says, stop finishing my sentences.
right. And I tell my mom, stop trying to tell me what I'm saying. So yeah. But when you're comfortable with somebody, you know what you can jump in and do and what you can't. So it's the same with AAC users.
Just in case you're not familiar, PWUAC, person who uses AAC. It's an acronym that we use. There's an organization called USAC, the United States Society of Augmentative Communication.
There are
They'll
flyers
have
over here.
chats via Zoom every quarter, where they get together and have a device user chat. They just talk to each other, and it's a QUAC meeting. So it's just another acronym.
I think it's late enough in the day we can use quack. So go.
Sure.
Yep.
Oh.
So
This is my friend Chris. He's the one with the shiny dot on his forehead. He took me to a baseball game. We have to remember that we need to be able to use our device wherever we want, whenever we want, and with whomever we want. And this was for AAC Awareness Month. We made this post, and I'm pretty sure Chris said Detroit sucks, because we were at a Sox game, and we might also need the taboo words as well. So I have a bunch of clients that are more than 21 who have said to me, I need all the bad words in their way. And we've taken the time to program all of the taboo and curse words into their device. They don't use them, but they have them. Yep. So this is us. This is Saird's little boy, Max, who's now 3. So he's bigger than that, and he has hair. But if you need to get a hold of us, again, my name is Beth Speaker Christensen. I'm at easc.slp@gmail. And Saird Bass can be found at sairdbass@gmail.com. Again, if you needed to get a hold of us and you wanted these slides, we would be happy to share them with you. Things that we didn't cover. There are a lot of conferences that cover augmentative communication and assistive technology. AAC in the Cloud is from Arizona.
Yes,
but it's in the cloud. So it's a virtual conference. If you want to learn more about AT and AAC, the ATAA, which is Assistive Technology Industry Association, CSUN is California's something. I went there once. Closing the Gap is CTG. AAC in the Cloud. ISAC is the International Society of AAC. They have a biannual conference. We were supposed to be in Cancun during COVID. We've had to cancel 3 times. Once we go to Cancun, 2 years after that, we're supposed to go to Rome. And 2 years ago, in 2018, my daughter and I went to Australia for the meeting. Fantastic, great organization where mostly device users are the ones who are chairing the committees and running some of the programming. So it's really nice to see adult people who use AAC in charge. And finally, if you'd like to learn a little bit more, Talking with Tech with Rachel Madel and Chris Bouguet is a really nice podcast that you can find on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It sounds like a plug. This is, see, I'm the chair of the membership committee, so I always put this up there. If you'd like to join USEC, I do have some information about it. Again, it's just a really nice organization. They do emergency preparedness. So if you live in an area where there's flooding or fires and your device, something happened, you could contact USAC and we would make sure that you have a system. They also have awareness committees to make sure that you're seen. They have membership committees and advocacy committees so that if you need legal representation for something like this, they're there for that. So that is the end of our presentation. Any questions? Right. Right. There are a lot. So the comment. Right. 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 So the comment was that we can't forget literacy-based systems. We can't forget literacy. It's very important that we still have device users reading and using language and writing and understanding how letters come together to make words. And there are many individuals who do not like picture-based systems. I know Danny has taken all of the pictures out of his device. Chris hated the devices with pictures because he thought it made him look like a baby. Adults are not going to be that into it either. Now, my friend Chris Klein, who's in his 40s, he uses his left big toe to access his device. He and his wife are fantastic. They get together with us. I get together with them for lunch up in Michigan. He uses MinSpeak on an Accent 1000 with his left big toe. And he can out-talk me any day. I mean, I talk more than 150 words a minute. He's maybe at 30 or 40. But he uses an icon-based system because it's what he's used the longest, and he knows he can just talk. He has a master's degree in theology. His undergrad, I think, is in sports science or something like that. He's crazy. But anyway, yeah, we have to consider all of those. You had a question as well. Okay, so the question is how difficult it is to use funding in order to get your systems, whether they be off the shelf or Medicaid or Medicare funded. What you would do is hook up with a speech language pathologist or a team that does assessments. The difficulty is not hard. It's a letter, a prescription from the doctor, your medical cards. Most of the big companies have a funding department that would help to make sure that you have all of your documentation together. The letter, some of the companies have templates that you can use to make sure you don't miss any spots, because you have to talk about physical ability and diagnosis. You have to talk about vision and hearing and ambulation and how do you get around and all of those things. Do you need letters or words or phrases? Do you need pictures or words or letters? All of those questions are asked. You write the letter, you submit it to funding, they submit it. It usually takes maybe a month for them to go through it. Some companies get bogged down and they're a little behind. I won't name names. But then once you get it, you'd have your device then for 5 to 7 years. The thing that goes along with that, though, is you'd want to find someone who's not only going to do an assessment, but they can also then follow up with you and make sure you understand how it works, make sure that there's some implementation. And so that's kind of why I started my private practice. I wanted to be able to go to people's homes where they are comfortable, do an assessment over time, because for us, reimbursement is not great when it comes to an hour of therapy, but I can't figure out what works for you in 1 hour. That's ridiculous. I need a lot more time than that.
Some evaluation centers will come, and I know yesterday you met someone who it's like they put a device in front of the client and 5 minutes. Oh, that's not working. Let's try this one. Okay, that's not working. It's kind of like trying on clothes back when we shopped for clothes in stores.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
I don't.
Taking off your clothes in the middle of a store so you could try on other clothes. Well,
Right.
in the dressing room, but
So
still,
it's
it
not
it was just a very quick, it seems like, to me, it just seems like a very quick process. So I think that if I myself were going through this process, I would probably say to the evaluator, you're going to book 2 hours here.
at least.
Just,
And if you find a match right away, it's a lot faster. I would say the process is easier than getting a wheelchair. I know that it's like a 12 or 14-page application in the state of Illinois to get funding for a wheelchair. And the wheelchair people aren't always on the ball either. I'm fighting with them as well. But I would say getting a communication device is easier than getting a wheelchair. So if that makes any sense. How old is your person?
yes. And the I will say this because I'm not in my school capacity right now. Some districts are better than others at providing the technology needed. Sometimes the school will try to go with the most, as they see it, cost-effective method. They might say, okay,
Give 'em an iPad.
we're going to give you an iPad because you go with direct selection. However, the user might need specialized mounting, might need something that's going to be a little bit more specialized in the iPad. And that's where it can become a struggle with the schools. It depends on your team. So I would say definitely
The other thing
If you
is-
feel it's not connecting or not working, you can definitely advocate with your school. Again, I'm not in my school role saying this, but sometimes teams do.
Well, and every state has a tech act, so you can borrow technology from your state tech act for sometimes up to a month. And it could be that you try one piece for a month and then you borrow another for a month and you just see how it works, maybe with the help of your SLP so that they can help you. Another avenue to go is you can borrow devices directly from the manufacturer and say, I saw this one, wondering if it works. The people out here near Chicago, I'm now friends with all of them, will meet and they'll come out to my client's home and try something, or they'll send it to me because they know I know how to do it. But I have Jenny lending me an Accent 1400 for one of my clients because her device broke. And so she says I can have it until school starts, which is in late August, early September. So now we've bridged the gap for Zoe because her device went. So there's lots of ways to get your hands on tech. The evaluation process is the best way to go. And again, through school, usually they have some technology to learn. Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's crazy. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Right. Yes.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. So I don't know if our Zoom people heard, but we're talking about how sometimes the manufacturer fancy devices are not what work best, because sometimes they do get behind. Sometimes they don't repair it fast enough. Our device users lose interest. A lot of teenagers will say, I don't want to look different. I'd rather have an iPad. There are a few apps that you can get on your phone. And so when you've got this isn't even a big phone, some of the larger phones are great screen size depending on your motor skills. And so having that TouchChat app or something on your phone is a nice option to have in your pocket because you have your phone anyway and you don't look different from the other kids. Sometimes adults would just rather have their phone. Yeah. Yeah, so do I. Yeah, I have it too. Well, the nice thing is, right, you break an iPad. If you don't have that, maybe you have 2 iPads in your home. You've got a backup and you've saved customizations up to the cloud so you can bring them back to your iTunes. So anyway, I think we're out of time. I don't know if anybody needs this room after us. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much for coming, guys. It was really nice meeting all of you. Have a great rest of your day.